and we can dive right in. So, as I said, thank you for coming to the Neighborhood Council election review for Region 12. So, what we'll be going over today is we're going to go over some election documents, a lot of what we use to prepare for the election season. Then we're going to go over candidate filing. Then we'll review the all vote by mail election model, which is going to be taking place in 2025. Then we'll talk about some election resources and open it up to questions. But I should add in between here, Mary Lou is going to give her presentation. So first I want to talk about when we talk about elections, our office reviews every neighborhood council's bylaws, and the areas that the sections that we review in the bylaws are going to be, first is going to be Article 3, where we review the boundaries. So we're looking at, are there internal boundaries, shared boundaries with other neighborhood councils, things of those nature. We review Article 4, which covers the stakeholder, which is, there are the 4 stakeholder types, which I'll go over in the next slide. We review Article 5, which goes over the governing board. So it breaks down the board structure, if there's term limits, if there's any special requirements, things like that will be captured in Article 5. Article 10 speaks specifically to elections. So this is where neighborhood councils will put the voter verification. So that's if it's a self-affirmation, documentation, if candidates can run for multiple seats, things of those nature, that will be found in Article 10. Attachment A, so this is a visual map. So it's taking Article 3 and then puts it to the visual. So we always review that, make sure it matches our system. And then lastly is Attachment B. So this has the governing board structure and the voting structure. So it breaks down all of the seats in the neighborhood council, along with if they're appointed, elected, selected. In addition, it will talk about the eligibility requirements to be a candidate and voter. So we review all of that when we talk about when we start preparing for the election. Just as a brief reminder, when we talk about stakeholder types, there's 4 stakeholder types when it comes to neighborhood councils, and this is across the board for all neighborhood councils. One is live, the most common, which is any stakeholder who resides within neighborhood council boundaries. 2 is work, so anyone who provides services within the neighborhood council boundaries. 3 is own property, so that's a stakeholder who owns real property within the neighborhood council boundaries. And then lastly is community interest, which has the definition of defined as a person who participates in a nonprofit organization that has continuously maintained a physical street address for not less than 1 year, and that performs ongoing verifiable activities and operations that benefit the neighborhood. So the key there is that they have to participate in a community organization, which is defined as a nonprofit organization that has a physical street address within the neighborhood council boundaries for not less than 1 year. So that's the 4 stakeholder types. So we take all of that information and we prepare the ballot voting models, which I like to kind of refer to as the blueprint for the election for every neighborhood council. So all of the ballot voting models have been emailed to the boards, to the neighborhood council boards for review. So just briefly, I wanted to kind of go over what's captured in the ballot voting model so that when you're reviewing it, you know what to kind of look for. So up top in the top right corner, you'd see the region that the neighborhood council is. Then you're going to see the neighborhood council name. That's going to be on all documents election related. So whatever's here is going to be on the ballots. It's what you're going to find in the neighborhood council portal, election results, and things of that nature. So it should be the full name along with the abbreviation for that neighborhood council. Then we break down how many ballot types there are. This is going to vary based on what the voting structure is for each neighborhood council. So there might be different stakeholders because of internal boundaries. So there might be a ballot for each internal boundary. Ballots issued, so that's how many ballots a voter can receive. There's some neighborhood councils where a voter may receive up to 10 ballots because of the stakeholder type that they have. Next is the board seats. So that's just how many board seats there are on the board and how many of them are up for election. What the term for those board seats, the voting age, the stakeholder verification type. It's going to be documentation or self-affirmation. If there's any candidate restrictions, the most common one being candidates can run for no more than one board seat. Something I do want to highlight that's new in other election related language, we are adding all of these shared boundaries. We just want to make sure so that on our staff and any neighborhood councils, when they're reviewing applications, it's just a quick point to know what a shared boundary is. So in this example, Venice High is a shared boundary, not only in Mar Vista, but it's also in Venice Neighborhood Council. We've also added the vote by mail period, just so it's easy reference. And then after that, we break down each ballot. So on this one, there's going to be 9. So there'll be 9 ballots broken down. So you'd see the title of the ballot, the eligibility to receive that ballot, and then which seats are going to be on that ballot with the seat name, and then the number of seats. So again, those should all be emailed out for Region 12, and feel free to email your election administrator if you have any questions, or you can email me as well. And I'll make sure to include my email in the chat later. So now that we've kind of talked about the blueprint for the election, I want to talk about the candidate filing process. Candidate filing for Region 12 is going to be November 22nd, 2024 through January 6th, 2025. So the candidate filing period for neighborhood councils is 45 calendar days. That's just standard across all regions. The portal will be open 24/7 during that period. So candidates can apply 2 different ways. They can go through our neighborhood council portal, or they can fill out a paper application. We'll go through both of those, but we will have paper applications available on our website, and they will be in PDF fillable forms and translated into 13 different languages. We have 14 languages in total, including English. When we talk about candidates, so whether a neighborhood council is self-affirmation or documentation, all candidates are required to provide documentation proving stakeholder status. This is a common question we get. So every candidate has to prove stakeholder status with documentation. When we talk about documentation, we're talking about 3 different things. So we're talking about a photo ID, proof of age, and proof of stakeholder status. The most common documentation we get is a driver's license, and that covers all 3 of these things. However, we can always pair these with different things, such as if someone, let's say someone has a driver's license with a different address than their current address, they can pair it with a current utility bill or something along those lines. So once our office receives the application, reviews all of the documentation, the candidate will be what we call certified if they've provided all of their documentation. Once a candidate is certified, there is a period of time where any stakeholder can challenge a candidate. And this can only be for certified candidates. If someone is a pending candidate, you can't challenge them because they haven't proven stakeholder status yet. However, once they're certified, they can be challenged. There's a form on our site, along with a paper application that can be filled out pretty easily, and that goes through our office, and we will review the challenge. Once all of the applications have been reviewed, candidate challenges have all been resolved, that we have what we call a certified list of candidates. This is released 60 days prior to the election. And then in addition to the certified list of candidates, we also will provide a contact information for the candidates to the neighborhood council so that they can reach out to those candidates should there be a candidate filing forum or just to provide information about the neighborhood council. So next, I want to break down the candidate filing paper application. So excuse me real quick while I change. Let's see. All right. So I'm going to go through what the paper application looks like for candidates. So this is one that's filled out. So at the top, they fill out their neighborhood council information. So for example, in this one, they're listing their neighborhood council, which is Venice. They list the seat name that they would like to run for. And then under that, there's the candidate information. So they put what name they would like to see on the ballot. So this is the name that they're known for in the community. They can add their pronouns. Their pronouns will only be listed on the candidate website. And then they can list their first and last name, their birth year. The phone number and email address are optional, but we highly recommend including those because should there be any questions about their application, we're able to reach out and work with the voter. What we have under that is we have the question, are you a current board member in this neighborhood council? It's a yes or no. This is just to really track for those neighborhood councils where there are term limits. This way, we're going to be able to review that application. So if someone said yes, and there's a term limit in this neighborhood council, we would be able to review that prior to certifying the candidate. Last part of the candidate information section is they can initial if they agree to receive neighborhood council information from Empower LA via text. This is optional, but they can do this, and Empower LA will text the candidates information on neighborhood councils. Next is the qualifying address section. So in this section, we have it broken down into the 4 stakeholder types, and the candidate fills out what their qualifying address is. When we talk about qualifying address, that's always the address that makes them a stakeholder. So for this example, this stakeholder works in the neighborhood council. So they have their work information listed here. So it's the organization they work for, the street address of the organization, and then they've checked that they're an employee. So after that, there's a documentation area. So if someone attaches documentation to their application, they can write in which documentation it is. So for example, this one, they provided a driver's license and pay stub. Since they're an employee, a driver's license alone does not prove that they work in the neighborhood council, but when it's paired with a pay stub, that can be documentation proving stakeholder status. And then they sign under penalty of perjury and date. And then on the back page, there's an area where they can include a candidate statement. And then this candidate statement will go on the candidate website. Whatever is included here will go directly on the website. We don't check for grammatical errors or any sort of, we don't edit those the statements. So that's the paper application. Now I want to go through what the neighborhood council portal looks like. So the portal is going to look like this. This is going to be the login page. The good news we have is last year, to access the neighborhood council portal, candidates and voters had to go through the Angelino account system. That is not the only way to access the portal anymore. They can, if they would like to, they can click here to sign in with an Angelino account, but they can also just create an account directly to the portal, which is probably going to be the preference for most candidates. So what they would do is they can just hit need an account register here. They type in their first name, last name, email confirmation, hit create. They're emailed a link to confirm that their email is real. Once they click on that, they'll be taken to a page to create a password and they can log into the account. So it's that easy. And so once all that's done, they can just click login. And so this is going to be the same page for candidates and voters, the same login for candidates and voters. I'll go over the voters a little bit later, but right now you can see I'm clicked for candidate and you can hit create candidate application. And so we have the candidate form here. And so the candidate application is broken up into 5 steps. The first one is going to be neighborhood councils. So they're going to select their neighborhood council. So for this example, I'm going to pick Coastal San Pedro. And so you'll only see the neighborhood councils that are up for election. This is a test site, so we have all kinds of neighborhood councils listed here. And then you're going to see seat names. So this won't be the seat names for every seat on the neighborhood council. It's only going to show the seats that are up for election. So for example, let's say that this neighborhood council had a community interest board seat, you would see that listed. You wouldn't see that listed here because maybe that's not up for election. So you're only going to see what's up for election. So you select the board seat. Once you select the seat that you would like to run for, the requirements are listed here. This is pulled directly from the bylaws to state how you can, the eligibility for that seat. So then they can select their stakeholder type. So I'll put live in this example, and then I'll click next. So now we have the candidate info. And so this is very similar to the paper application. So it's the name as it will appear on the ballot. So I'll just put, that's the name for the ballot. And then you have the option to add pronouns. So you can add that. And then it pulls your first name and last name and email from the account setup, but that's editable. So like in this case, I can just change my name there. And then you can include the date of birth. So let me just enter a date of birth there. And then you can include a phone number. You can decline to state phone number, but as I mentioned, we do always highly recommend that emails and phone numbers are provided so that we can work with candidates. But for this one, I'll just decline to state. And then there's the option to click if you agree to receive neighborhood council information from Empower LA. It is optional, so if you leave it unclicked, you'll be able to proceed. So now we're in step 3, which is the qualifying address. And so I just want to note that the board member requirements stay up on the site. And so then you put in the qualifying address. So for this example, I can put in address. So once I've typed that in, I can click verify qualifying address just to see if the address that I provided is within the neighborhood council boundaries. So great news, this address is within the boundaries. So it marks it with the green triangle. You can also see that the whole neighborhood council is outlined here. If it's a neighborhood council that has internal boundaries and that seat is tied to one of those internal boundaries, the map will only show the internal boundary outlined. So it really depends on the seat, but even if, let's say, that this is mapped outside of the boundaries, it's not going to stop anyone from submitting an application. They'll be able to submit their application, even if it doesn't match. They'll just get a notification that we'll have to look into it on our end. Because sometimes it might be a shared boundary, and for some reason it's not showing. And so we can look into that a little bit deeper on our end before reaching out to the candidates, but we don't want to stop anyone from submitting an application. And then there's the option to include a mailing address. You can click same as qualifying. You can hit different from qualifying and include that, or decline to state. So I'll hit decline to state. And so it's worth noting when we talk about candidate filing applications, it's really a two-step kind of process. There's submitting your candidate filing application. So that has to be done during the candidate filing period. And so once I hit next, I'm going to have two screens that I have to agree to. And once I agree to those, my application will be considered submitted. After the candidate filing deadline, there are 3 days to provide any documentation proving stakeholder status. So that's 3 additional days. But the submission date has to be met. Documentation can be provided later, but the submission date has to be met. So once I hit next, I'm going to pop up. This first one is the penalty of perjury agreement, and then a notice just reminding the stakeholder that it's their responsibility to provide documentation proving stakeholder status. So you can click accept. You submit that. And then next is the neighborhood council board member candidate for election board service acknowledgement and affirmation form. This form has a lot of helpful information on it, especially for candidates who are new to the neighborhood council system. It doesn't have to all be read here. We do have this available on our website, so it can be reviewed at any time. But once it's reviewed, you can click to the bottom and accept and hit submit. So once that's submitted, that means that that candidate filing application has been submitted and it would have met the candidate filing deadline. So then now we're on step 4 of the application. Step 4 is the documentation deadline, or where you upload documentation. So one helpful thing, if you click here, it will take stakeholders to our documentation guide. And this breaks down all of the different, well, a vast majority of the different stakeholder types. So like, let me click one that's a little bit more. So if someone's a renter or a tenant, and that's how they have a stakeholder type, it breaks down kind of some examples of documents that we typically accept. This is not an exhaustive list. This is this list just covers kind of the basis of common documents that we receive. So next up is it does break up. It will always say proof of ID, and then it will say proof of live or whichever stakeholder status they chose. Like, for example, if it said proof, if they said that they're a stakeholder because they work within the NC, this would say proof of work. They can upload just one document, because if that one document covers everything, that's fine. This is just to kind of help people remind themselves of what kind of documentation they might need. So when you're uploading a document, you can select from the dropdown. We have just common documents that we see, and then all of them have an other in case it doesn't fit any of those categories. But like I'll click a driver's license. You can select a file. So like I can upload this driver's license, and it gives me a notice that that was uploaded and that our office will review the documentation. But, if I feel that that covers it, I'll just click next. And so now we're on to step 5, which is the last step of the application. This step is optional and this can be updated as soon as 35 days or as late as 35 days prior to the election. It can be uploaded and changed multiple times through the season. This is where you can upload your candidate photo and statement. So to upload a photo, you would just hit upload photo, select the file. So as you can see here, so you can kind of edit to say, like, let's say I want to change it slightly. So this is going to be the actual preview because we want all of the candidate photos to be uniform. So they're always this size, but you can kind of change how it's framed. So when I look down here, I can see, okay, that looks good. So I can click use this image. And then you can include the statement. So candidate statements can be up to 1,000 characters. That's including punctuation and spaces. So it's up to the candidate what to put. So I can put just put that, for example. And as you can see down here, is it started to list how many characters I've currently used out of the 1,000 characters, just so you can kind of keep an eye on that. Once that's done, I can click save. It is worth noting, so candidate photos and statements do not go up on the candidate website until we've reviewed it. The reason that we do that is because we've had it in multiple years prior to us reviewing it, where someone might upload a private document. We've had driver's license, deeds, all different kinds of very sensitive materials that have been uploaded on that website. And because we didn't review it, it just goes up there and we're not notified until we see it or someone has notified us. So we now go through the process where we just simply review it to make sure that it's not someone accidentally sharing that kind of sensitive material. So you just hit save. And so what happens is you're going to see a lot because I have quite a few applications that I've been testing. But for every application that you've submitted, we have what's called a candidate tile. So I'm going to see if I have a good one. Here we go. So what it will show is it will have what that ballot name is going to be, which neighborhood council it's for the seat, the stakeholder type that's chosen, and then you can see the status here. So like this one's green because it's been certified. However, you might have one here that's like under review. So our office is currently reviewing that one. And then we have all of the different filing deadlines here. And anytime you can go in and click the candidate photo and statement to update that as long as it's during that period, which, as I said, so the deadline to upload a candidate photo and statement is 35 days prior to the election. The reason for that deadline is we want to make sure that those candidate photos and statements are out by the time we start mailing out ballots. So when it comes to an application, so when you create an account, technically, if someone was interested, they would be able to file a candidate application for every neighborhood council that has elections that season. And if they're a stakeholder, they would be eligible to run for all of those neighborhood councils. So That's important to note. So now let me go back to the presentation a little bit. So we went through the candidate filing portal. Now I want to talk about the all vote by mail registration process. So again, in 2025, all neighborhood council elections are going to be all vote by mail. So for Region 12, that's going to be January 24th through March 16th, 2025. And I want to go break down kind of the process for that. So the first part is the vote by mail application is submitted. It's really important to note that when it comes to neighborhood councils, stakeholders have to submit an application every election season. So even if they've been voting in that neighborhood council since it was created, every year they've had to file an application, and that will still be the case. The reason for that is because as bylaws change, requirements change, stakeholder statuses change. We want to make sure that we're supplying the correct ballot to each stakeholder. So once we've received an application, we will review that application and go through the voter verification process. So we'll verify that they're a stakeholder and that they're eligible to vote in that election. Once the application's been reviewed, the voter's been verified, they will get a ballot packet mailed to them. So what's included in that ballot packet is going to be ballots. It's their ballot or ballots based on if it's a neighborhood council where they can receive multiple. They will have instructions. Included in those instructions will be deadlines for when the ballot has to be mailed. It will also include information on where to find the candidate website so that they can research the different candidates, and it will include a prepaid return envelope. Next step is stakeholder votes. So they, review, vote, and then lastly, the ballot will be returned to our office. So there's 3 different ways that the ballots can be returned to our office. That's going to be using that prepaid return envelope with USPS. We're going to have some neighborhood council ballot boxes available at libraries and rec and park facilities throughout the region. And then it can also be dropped off at our office. Lastly, one thing I do want to make note of is these sections that have the asterisk on it. Voters will get notified on each of those steps so that they can follow the registration process. So when they submit an application, they'll receive an email. Once we've reviewed their application and verified that they're a stakeholder, they will receive an email notifying them that their application has been reviewed and verified. They will receive an email when their ballot packet is mailed this way so that they can kind of gauge, let's say they got that email 2 weeks ago and they haven't seen their ballot, they can contact us and we can mail them out a new ballot. So that can be really helpful so that they can keep an eye. And then as soon as we receive their ballot and we've scanned it, they will receive an email letting them know that we have received their ballot. So I want to talk about voter verification a little bit. When it comes to neighborhood councils within their bylaws can decide if they want voters to be verified using self-affirmation or documentation. So I'm going to go through kind of the differences there. The first thing that we're looking for is identity. So all that's needed for self-affirmation is on the form. They'll be providing voter information on the application. When it comes to documentation, they'll be needing to provide a photo ID, such as a driver's license. Next is age, because there's always an age requirement when it comes to neighborhood councils. And so self-affirmation, they'll be providing their date of birth on the application. When it comes to documentation, they will provide a document with the date of birth. So I gave that example of driver's license because it's the most common document that a lot of people have access to that can provide both of these things. But it can also be a California ID, things of those nature. Then lastly is stakeholder status. So with self-affirmation, they're going to provide their stakeholder status address on the application. So like if we were looking at the example that I mentioned earlier, that person filled out the form. They stated that they work in the neighborhood council. They filled out that form. That is self-affirmation that they're a stakeholder, as long as that address is within the boundaries. Lastly, when it comes to documentation, so they need a document with that stakeholder status. So in this example, it could be a utility bill. Let's say that their driver's license is expired. That's fine. It can still have their identity and age because that's not going to change. But a current utility bill could be tied to prove that they're a current stakeholder with that status. So I also want to touch on the registration options when it comes to voters. So the first one's going to be online registration, which is going to be the portal. I'm going to show you the registration process through the portal. It's pretty simple. The registration process in the portal is going to be 51 days for each neighborhood council. The benefit of going through the portal is stakeholders are able to track the application and their ballot status easily. So in addition to those emails, they can log in at any point and see the status of their ballot. So like they'd be able to see that it's been mailed, that it's been received, things like that. The second option is the paper application. This will be available 81 days. The reason for this is from neighborhood councils have always asked for paper applications to make those available for a longer period of time. So we're happy to do that. The benefit, there's a few benefits to a paper application. One of them being that we do have those available in 13 languages other than English on our website. They will be in fillable PDF forms, or they can also be just filled out and mailed to our office. Another benefit that a lot of boards and candidates see a benefit to is voters can designate an authorized agent to collect their application. So for example, let's say that Musa is on a board for Wilmington. He'll be able to, if Wilmington is having a community event, he can hand out paper applications, have stakeholders fill that out. And then there's a portion of the application that they can fill out so that he can collect all of those applications and provide those to our office. And we can start reviewing those applications and working with those stakeholders to get them their ballot. So let me switch screens very quickly. I'm going to go to, this is the vote by mail application. It's similar to the candidate filing application, but it's a little bit different, as you'll see. So we talk about, this one's broken up into smaller sections. So the first one's going to be voter information, which includes listing which neighborhood council they're a part of. We also just have a quick link so that if they're not sure, they could go to that link, type in their address, and that would tell them exactly which neighborhood council they're a part of. Then they can include their first name, middle name, last name, birth year, phone number, and email address. Just like candidates, phone numbers and email address is optional. Highly recommend so that we can reach out to those voters if there's any questions about their application. And then lastly, in this section is they can initial if they agree to receive neighborhood council information from Empower LA via text. Completely optional, not required. And then there's the qualifying address section. I do want to highlight that we do state complete all that apply here, because with different neighborhood councils, that can mean something different. Let's say that someone puts live and work, and they include addresses. That might mean that they're eligible to receive multiple ballots with that neighborhood council. So that's why we have that kind of statement here. So with this one though, they live in the neighborhood council, so they're including their information here, and then they check how they, you know, they kind of specialize a little bit more, because like here they're putting own property. This information, all of these check boxes can give us more information on which ballot they can receive, because sometimes someone who owns property versus someone who rents property, they might be receiving different ballots based on that neighborhood council. But this person also has community interest, so they've included that on this form here. So then after that, they can include a mailing address if it's different from above. So because like they might, if they work in the neighborhood council, that doesn't mean that their mailing address is within the neighborhood council. So this address does not have to be within the boundaries. This address is just where they receive mail. Then they sign under penalty of perjury. And then this is that section I was mentioning where they can name an authorized agent. So like, for example, I could be in an event handing out applications for voters. They can fill it out, and then we would just fill out this section so that I could collect all those applications and return them to our office. And so the filing portal is going to be the same for voters as it is for candidates. So it's the same login screen. So I've created my account and my password. So I'm going to log in. I'm going to click voter. And then I can create a voter application. So with voters, it's a lot less steps. It's broken down into 2 or 3 steps. I'll kind of go over that in a moment. But for right now, we'll just have 2 steps. So the first one is just going to be voter information. Just like on the candidate side, it pulls that information from the account that I registered from. So it pulls my first name and last name and email from my registration. But let's say that that's not my name, the name that I want on my ballot, I can change it here. So I can change that. And then you can include a date of birth. I do want to mention for both candidates and voters, we are sensitive that sometimes stakeholders can be hesitant to provide their full date of birth. That's okay. We totally understand that. Someone can put 0101 to cover their month and date, and then just include their birth year. So let's say, for example, let's say I was born in 1976, but 0101 is fine because the portal will recognize that as a full date. And that it's really the year that we are focused on, because that meets the eligibility requirements. There's the option to do a contact preference. So it's email or phone. So some stakeholders prefer a phone call, some prefer an email, so that can just be listed here. So I'll just leave it email. Phone number, again, is optional. So that can be left blank, but highly encouraged. And then they can click there if they agree to receive neighborhood council information from Empower LA via text, but optional. So then they can click next. And so I just want to show it here. So right now it's going to be 2 steps. So if it's self-affirmation, it's going to stay 2 steps. When it becomes documentation, it's going to show 3 steps. So once I select my neighborhood council, so let's say I select, I'm going to select Mar Vista. So once I did Mar Vista, because it's documentation required, it will go to the 3 steps. However, if I choose Central San Pedro, it will be 2 steps. So next is stakeholders types. So with this application, they can select, let's say that I live and I work. You check both of those. And once you check them, a box will show here tied to those. So there's a residence address because I selected live, and then a work address because I chose work. So, but you can unclick that, and then now I only have the residence address here. So let me type in, I'm actually going to type in that same address just so you can see what it looks like when an application does not have an address within the boundaries. So you click, just like the candidate application, you would click verify address. And so with this time, you can see this is where the address is mapped, and outlined is the neighborhood council. And so you just see a message that said could not verify qualifying address. It will be checked after application submission. So it's not going to stop that voter from submitting their application. They can go through. And then underneath that, they can include a mailing address. So let's say include that. And then there's the option to click verify mailing address, or it will just pop up when they hit submit. What that means is that's very similar to, most of the time when you're ordering anything online, and you click, submit or finish payment, it will confirm your address because it's verifying through USPS that it matches, their address. So when I hit submit, yes, there's a issue with this address. I guess I confused it too much. So let me put an address that when you hit verify mailing address, what it typically does, unless you confuse it like I did, it will give you what the USPS recommends as that format. Almost everybody is going to have this because it will add those last 4 digits. But if you don't want to use that, so if you hit no, use the address I provided, that's no problem. The application will still go through. So you can just hit yes, submit the application. Again, you get that pop-up because I did it the wrong way. And then a pop-up just declaring under penalty of perjury that everything is true and correct. Click accept. You hit submit. And that application has now been submitted. So like I was referencing a little bit earlier, if anyone logs into their application at any point, you can see the status. So you would see a tile card for each neighborhood council application that you've submitted. So for this one, it's Echo Park. I can see the status and I can see that application's been mailed. I can see the first name, last name, the date I submitted it, and the filing deadline. You can see this one is just awaiting a ballot assignment. So you can at any point log in and see the status of that application. So with that, let me go back to the presentation. And so now I want to really go over quite a few of the important vote by mail dates for Region 12 specifically. So vote by mail application period begins. That's Friday, January 24th. Ballot mailing begins Tuesday, February 18th. The vote by mail application period ends Sunday, March 16th. The deadline to request a resend ballot is going to be Tuesday, March 18th. And election day is officially Tuesday, March 25th. And the deadline to receive postmarked ballots is 10 days after the election, which will be Friday, April 4th, 2025. So when we talk about returning ballots, as I kind of touched on earlier, we have a few different options. For Region 12, just to highlight, so election day, again, is March 25th, 2025. The first way a ballot can be returned is USPS, using that postage paid envelope. The other option is we have library and recreation and park locations in every region where we will have ballot drop boxes available. I do want to highlight as well that at those locations, we are also going to have paper applications for candidates and voters available during those periods. And ballots can always be dropped off at our office as well. So when I talked about rec and park and library locations, the good news is for Region 12, we have quite a few that will be housing candidate filing applications, vote by mail applications, and ballot boxes. So I've listed all 7 here. This will also be available on our website. So these locations will have applications available during the applicable times, and then also we'll have a ballot box available where stakeholders can drop off their ballot if that's their preferred method. And then lastly, I want to highlight the NC election administrators for Region 12. So we have 4 election administrators in our office. Each one is assigned to a neighborhood council. So they should be your direct contact. Should you have any questions about the election, always feel free to reach out to them through email, or you can call my office. We'll make sure to include that information in the chat. And then you can also reach out to me too if you need anything. So with that, I know that was a lot of me talking. I apologize, but I'm going to hand it over to Mary Lou.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, perfect. I hope everybody's doing well. I'll be brief in my presentation. For a longer version of this presentation, I ask you all to please take a look at, and you can definitely reach out to me, a presentation that we did for a September 30 town hall on our engagement plan. At that town hall, we shared an in-depth look at our engagement plan on everything that the department has been working on and will be executing through the election cycle. Today, I'll provide a brief high-level overview of that. For the most part, I will be focusing on preliminary things that your neighborhood councils can focus on to prepare for the election cycle, specifically the candidate filing. And I will highlight some of the things that we will be sharing with you and how your preparation can complement some of the tools that we'll be sharing. With that said, obviously our vision is a successful election. As you all know, we work really closely with the Office of the City Clerk, who works and provides oversight the administration of the election process. We, on our end, with the collaboration of you, neighborhood councils, our city partners, our city departments, are looking to increase engagement that eventually translates to more candidates, more voters, and overall an increased awareness of the neighborhood council system, which translates to more people at your meetings, more people in terms of capacity at in your committees, and obviously filled board seats. So our framework for engagement is relatively simple, but the work that each entails is relatively complex. We've identified a couple of objectives within our campaign that we hope provides us a citywide outreach and it moves us closer to where we want to be in terms of neighborhood council awareness. So with that, obviously the core of everything is messaging and communications. Working with media partners, either through advertisement, city departments, is key. Simple messaging that focuses on the work that the neighborhood councils do, the power and the asset that holding a board seat is can bring to an individual in a community. So with that said, we are relying a lot on our city partnerships, a lot of our trusted messengers in the community, and looking for ways to increase that messaging across the city through some paid advertisement. So with that said, looking to any feedback any of you provide. You can contact me via email if you know of any specific micro newspapers in your area that are great partners or provide great space for advertisement. Please let me know so that I can get in contact with them. I've been in contact with a lot of different neighborhood councils who've given great contacts. With that said, city partnerships are key. As Michael stated, we have a great partnership with Recreation and Parks. The LA Public Library will be rolling out a series of workshops in person and on Zoom that we hope to promote via not only their email lists, but also do in person at some of their locations throughout the city to promote candidate filing, go through the vote by mail process, and to just kind of answer questions and do some promotional events. Community events are key, which is why candidate and voter engagement is key. We're looking for regional partners that we can work with to execute, get out the vote, and increase awareness around the election. So I will be reaching out to your neighborhood councils in the Harbor region to see about putting together an event as as we kind of go through the holidays, kind of post holidays, to kind of bring out the community, a great resource fair that's also a great way to not only to engage people, let them know an election's happening, let them know that they can sign up to vote and be a candidate depending on what part of the election cycle we're in. Supporting coordination with neighborhood councils, as I stated, we have a lot of communication that we are going to be sending out in the next couple of weeks. A lot of templates, a lot of tools, a lot of social media graphics and content for you all to put to great use, to use in your newsletters, to put on your websites, to share on your social media platforms, so that you don't have to invest too much capacity or time to put that together. So we're leading that work now, and we hope to roll it out sooner rather than later so you can get started right when the candidate filing period opens. There's a QR code there, but not to worry. Our engagement plan is on our elections page. And additionally, I can also make sure that it's sent out with any post emails after today's workshop. Really today, what I want to focus on is how do we go ahead and work together in partnership to create local engagement as part of this awareness plan. So a couple of next slides, we'll go over a recommended framework in which we work with neighborhood councils to support our efforts and leverage community partners and communications and kind of provide a unique personalized approach to leverage and increase awareness around the neighborhood council elections. It's a four-prong effort: identifying community partners, developing awareness through messaging, determining engagement through awareness methods, and using engagement tools that we'll be providing to increase success in that area. With that said, I think one of the key questions that I always am asked by neighborhood councils is, how can we increase our awareness? How can we let individual, how can we increase our messaging around not only just our meetings, but also, vacancies, that we have elections, that we have events coming up. And I always say, look to those in your community. So those would be your organizations. Many of you provide many of these organizations with NPGs. These can also be nonprofits, homeowner associations, block clubs, chambers of commerces in your area, and just local businesses. We ourselves will be doing some canvassing. We ourselves will be reaching out to some of these organizations. But if your neighborhood council has a unique list, personalized list of organizations or partners that you work with year round, that you've provided funding to, I would say this is the time to activate those lists. It's the time to share some of the resources and some of the templates that we'll be passing on, and include them as part of your email list. Additionally, developing awareness through messaging. So as I stated before, we'll be providing a lot of this basic messaging that you don't have to recreate. We'll be creating a full campaign for the entire election process that will include, website, social media, newsletters, and templates for in-person events for you all to share. That include, anything from the candidate filing process to the vote by mail process to getting out the vote, to who to come to for questions, and just kind of motivating your stakeholders to participate in the process. We'll have some templates for flyers, lawn signs, and get out the vote events. There is a one-pager that accompanies this presentation. It's our guide for neighborhood councils to increase and create some unique awareness around not only the neighborhood council meetings, but also the elections. It has a range of activities that you can use to implement and reach out and reach stakeholders, which include, attending meetings in your community, working with us, the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, to do some direct contact of some partners, facilitate presentations, and really just use your platforms to kind of expand the awareness and of your work. With that said, I'll kind of highlight a couple of the things that are included in the guide. Creating an awareness program. So that means that engaging board and committee members and partner organizations to not only create, but also to disseminate resources that you can share through your networks. I always tell, specifically, I always tell board members, if during the election cycle, you do outreach to 20 people, if you have 10, 15 board members, that's already hundreds of people that you've reached out to. and informed about the neighborhood council elections and some deadlines. So just, reaching out to community networks, your neighbors, personal friends, professional networks is key during this time. If you think they may be a stakeholder, reach out to them. Um, Updating your elections page. If you have a website, if somebody is visiting your website during this election period, they should be able to know that your neighborhood council is having an election. You can link to voter registration links, either that are on our website or the office of the city clerk. You can link um, to applications. You can create, whatever collateral material and link it on your website to really let the community know that your neighborhood council is in the middle of an election at the moment. Community and neighborhood council events. These can include tabling, canvassing, that's either led by board members, and volunteers, committee members in partnership with the department as well, to really get the word out. I'm available, if on a nice Saturday morning, to do a walk with you through your neighborhood and just kind of hand out either door hangers or flyers, and just to let the community and local businesses know that there's a neighborhood council in their area. Obviously, your social media, you should be prepping your Facebook, your Instagrams, your X, or your, if you still call it Twitter, your Nextdoor, and any other social platform that you distribute information, and prepare to distribute some of the election information. Additionally, if you work with community-based organizations, make sure that you follow them online. Make sure that they follow you online, so that when you post, they can see the materials that you're posting and the messaging that you're posting. Voter engagement presentations, when you reach out to community-based organizations, feel free to include me in the conversation, and we can reach out together and we can schedule presentations. A lot of community organizations schedule monthly meetings or quarterly meetings to their members or service providers to highlight their programs. And many times they're an asset in the sense that there's an opportunity or a space to provide information about the local neighborhood council in the area, and connecting people to city resources. So consider that an idea. If you already have a list, sending out introductory emails and letting them know if you could come to their next meeting. That could be a really key way to kind of begin communication around, the work that your neighborhood council does. We have template presentations if you don't want to start from scratch, and I can definitely help you create a presentation. With that said, advertising, it's just one option. It doesn't, it might work for your neighborhood council. There are some at cost, even some no cost messaging that might exist throughout your neighborhood council service area. There could be public service announcements, ads, articles in local publications. You all, you consume information in your community. If it's a newspaper that you regularly read, my sense is that others read it too, others, especially your neighbors. So consider, reaching out to them, seeing if they have perhaps an ad or some ad space, or maybe they want to do a story about your neighborhood council. Stories and storytelling goes a long way. And we're definitely here at the department trying to utilize it. So definitely encourage neighborhood councils to do that too, because there's no better way to kind of make connections with individuals than storytelling. And obviously, schools, so that'd be, college student and school engagement. Obviously, many of you may not have youth seats, so your focus might be on university and college campuses, but just doing, reaching out to associated student bodies, political science professors, kind of honing in on government classes and introducing yourself, and, once again, offering to do maybe a class presentation or to come in and work on introducing the work that the neighborhood council does in the area. Those are just a brief overview. Obviously, I'm open for questions and I'm definitely open for your feedback. My contact information is on screen. We have a lot that we're going to be releasing in the next couple of weeks. I look forward to working alongside you all. If there's anything that I can provide support in, please definitely, and I'm trying to stop my screen share. Please definitely consider us a partner. And thank you so much. Let me see.
All right, thank you, Mary Lou.
Yeah.
And with that, I will open it up to if there's any questions on any neighborhood council election related kind of questions, anything we can, myself or Mary Lou are here to help. So feel free to raise your hand if you have a question.
Oh, Michael, if I may, I see,
Yeah.
I think it's Barbara St. John. And if who I see who reached out to me while I was presenting. I believe she shared that there'll be a holiday parade in Central San Pedro. So Barbara and anyone else consider I'll be reaching out. I think that's a great opportunity. Perhaps we can do some coordination. Either we can provide some support if you're already participating. If not, the department can definitely lead kind of the coordination. So I'll be in touch.
Just to, we are participating and we've been offered a table to set up there, actually with all three of the councils, in San Pedro. It's a huge event that we have thousands that come to it. So,
Perfect.
I would love to get some stuff prior to that, would be great.
I'll coordinate with you, and if you need, we'll get some hard copy applications to you. We'll get you some promotional stuff to hand out.
Awesome.
Make sure to connect with you to make sure you're fully stocked for the event.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mary Lou, can I jump in here a sec on that? There is also the first week of December, first Thursday in San Pedro, which is a event where a lot of people also show up. So we don't necessarily have a dedicated spot for that, but we could probably work something out. The other thing, just as an FYI, the San Pedro Public Library branch is closed for renovations. And my daughter, who works there, told me that the latest information is that they will probably not be open before maybe December the 20th. Yeah, they keep moving back the opening date. So just to let you all know that.
Good.
I'm sorry, if I could just jump in real quick, Doug. I do the first Thursday, I have a table set up there. So if you would coordinate with that, I'll do it in front of the Grand Annex.
Yeah, you and I are going to have coffee soon.
I guess so.
Since I have become the default outreach chair. Apparently.
No problem.
All right.
And then I also just wanted to mention too, feel free to reach out to your election administrator if you know of any events too, because we can also maybe help and, staff and, provide any information, whether it's about candidates or voters, to help at the event too. Because, our goal is really to help neighborhood councils as much as possible. So your election administrator is really kind of your election advocate to help you through the process. So feel free to reach out to them or myself if you have any events or if there's any ideas that would really work for the community. We'd be happy to partner on that. So.
And with that said, also lean on your neighborhood empowerment advocates, specifically we'll be having some hard copy applications in our office. So if you plan ahead, if you will be needing hard copy applications, either obviously for candidate filing, or once we get to the voter registration to vote, to request a vote by mail ballot, please communicate it to your neighborhood empowerment advocate, and we'll make sure to get those out so that they can deliver them at your meetings. And if you need them for an event, obviously you can always reach out to them or reach out to myself.
Awesome. And then I did one other thing that I didn't really touch on earlier, but we've been partnering with Dunn, and we have some reels coming out. So on social media, feel free to share those that will kind of go over what neighborhood councils are, that it's election time, kind of really briefly going over how to fill out applications, where to reach out if you have questions and stuff like that. So a lot of that is coming, and that will be just on the city clerk's social media so that it can be shared with your stakeholders as well, to really try to help get the word out. There'll be, pretty short, brief 1-minute videos to hopefully grab someone's attention. And then I see that we have a hand raised.
Yeah, hi, it's me again, Barbara St. John. I just have a question about, you were saying we should reach out to our Empower advocate.
Oh, yes,
We
your
have-
NEA.
Yeah, unfortunately, ours just got, he's not with us any longer.
Oh, okay.
And we
you're
have a
going through it.
brand new guy we haven't even met yet. We will be having our stakeholders meeting next Tuesday night. If there would be any way that someone could make sure we could get something for that prior to that meeting, or somehow, that would be awesome. But I don't really know who to reach out to in that respect.
Not a problem, Barbara. Thank you for mentioning it. I will make note of it and I will reach out to him.
Thank you.
All right, great. Are there any other questions? Comments?
Hi, Michael. How's it going, everybody? Thanks for the presentation. The last time we had all by mail voting, there were a lot of difficulty that people were having with the registration process, and also there were people that gave us feedback that the ballots didn't come back in time, or there were a lot of things going on. And so with the announcement that we were going to have the same process more or less with an all vote by mail election this time, there's been a lot of discussion amongst stakeholders, et cetera, that they're a bit concerned about the same kinds of problems happening again. And I've been asked on many different occasions already, it's, oh, well, where's the in-person polling place going to be? And I said, well, they say it's going to be 100% vote by mail. And so the question that I have to bring back to them is, isn't there any way that we could possibly have an in-person voting location to accommodate people who are perhaps they don't have a computer or a smartphone, and then this is something that's really hard for them, and maybe somebody would go to the library, oh, but our library is closed, and da, 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 da. I mean, there's a lot of issues that being able to have an in-person voting place would solve. Isn't there any way we could do that?
So unfortunately, no, because we were provided funding only to do all vote by mail. However, I know 2021 was the last time we did all vote by mail, and there was a lot. It was a big learning curve. I think we really used a lot of the stuff that we learned. We got a lot of feedback about things we could improve, and we've implemented almost all of that, hoping that this can really help, because even the portal was quite complicated compared to what it is now, because like you had to not only select your neighborhood council, you had to select your ballot, and then that alone was, most people would just quit because they're like, I don't understand.
Angelino account too that you
Yeah.
had.
So there's all kinds of things that we've really tried to simplify it. The thing that we're really trying to partner with neighborhood councils more. Part of the reason that we're doing these sessions for each region is to really get the information out there about how this election is going to work, and really kind of start the conversation of how can we help, because we want to empower the neighborhood councils to know what's going on with the elections. And then something that I think is really possible that was not possible in 2021, because of the pandemic. But now we can have events. So we might not be able to have in-person voting, but we could, definitely kind of partner together and do an in-person voter outreach event of some sort. So they won't be receiving their ballot, but they could fill out their application. If it's documentation required, that's why we want to probably partner together so that we could have staff there so that we could review their documentation, document that, and then take those applications in, process that, and get those ballots in the mail. Even if we do it that way, if there's an email address, they will receive those emails I talked about. They will get all of that. So even though they didn't go through the portal, when we enter their application, they'll get an email that we've gotten their application. They'll get one once their ballot's been mailed, all of that, so they can still track everything. So, I think we all would love to go to a hybrid model, but unfortunately we can't this election season. But we want to make the best of it. And I think that we can definitely do a lot of things that we can improve upon, from 2021. So it might seem like it's going to be that same thing again, but there's so much more we can do. So, please reach out to myself, your EA, your NEA, Mary Lou, and we can talk about events and stuff we can do for voters, because we do want to make it, especially for those who don't have easy access to the internet or just need assistance through that. We want to make sure that we do that. That's why I always say too, if we get a paper application that has a name and a contact, like a email or phone number, we're reaching out to that person multiple times to try to help them. We don't go, this is incomplete, whatever, we're not touching it.
Right.
We reach out to them and do what we can. So hopefully things will be better, and also I just want to mention it briefly, something in 2021, because it was new, we were just trying it out. We did not provide enough information about what to do once you got your ballot. So we're trying to really improve that, because a lot of people would hear election. So they register, they get their ballot, and they're like, I have no idea what this is. So we're trying to provide information with their ballots, and hopefully that will help the process as well. And that includes, we didn't even have the election day information on documentation. Now we do. So hopefully that really helps.
One idea that just came to mind that would be a great outreach tool. Obviously, with this system, anybody who wants to vote has to go into the portal or get in a paper application, et cetera, and get it in there. And then you're sending ballots directly to that person. And, of course, in California, every registered voter for, an election like the one we just had gets all their mail-in stuff sent to them automatically. And, people are used to that. It may be that you have access to the database that has registered voters in general, email contact information, for example. Um, I don't, I don't see a problem sending at least an email to the registered voters that you have who vote in the general election, for example, to let them know that there's, X number of 99 neighborhood councils, and the ones for San Pedro, Coastal, Central, and Northwest, and there's an election coming up, these dates for these neighborhood councils, and we wanted to let you know about it because there's a different process that you need to follow to vote for them, and basically, here's what you need to do. And it may very well be that, in some elections for some neighborhood councils, you could have 1,000 people or more voting. Sometimes you can have 50 or more, or fewer people voting. But that would be a terrific outreach method to people who are registered to vote and typically would vote in a general election like the one we just had, and might not even know that a neighborhood council exists, and could be an entry point for them to get excited about making contact with a close to the ground grassroots local political organization that can help bring their issues directly to city government. It seemed to me like that would be doing a tremendous service for the community to reach out to obviously tens of thousands of people that way just with an email blast.
Yeah, so we did do that in 2021. We worked with the county, so we can definitely look into the possibility of doing that again. So we'll work out and then see if that's possible, because all of that information is um the county is the custodian of all of that information, so we always have to partner with them
Yeah.
and see if that's possible, but we can reach out.
Norwalk.
Um, we can reach out and I'll follow up with you once I have more information on that.
And you have my contact info anyway.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doug has his hand up now.
Yes,
Oh, I think we should have Noel make a video. Send it out to everybody, because just
That's what I
listening
was
to him,
thinking.
I am so excited about being involved in the neighborhood council because of Noel. He has a great cat too, so if you can get the cat in the video, you got a total winner. But this brings up one thing. So at libraries and parks and stuff, wherever you're going to have these paper ballots and stuff, it would be really helpful if you had a big sign pointing to them with a QR code, for example. And I don't know, I haven't looked at the election site lately, but do you have a video that explains to people how to fill out or how to walk through the process to get a ballot or sign up to run?
yes. We
Okay.
we don't have it up right now, but we will have it up very shortly. Like, we'll have the candidate one open during the candidate filing period and the vote by mail for vote by mail period. And we do have a QR code because we won't just have the applications, they'll
Okay.
be in holders.
Right. Yeah.
And then on there, it would say to apply online, but it will go to our website so they could see a video that can walk them through the process.
One thing I would highly recommend for any library or, again, community center, rec and parks, wherever you're going to put these things, make sure that the people who work there are well informed. Because I mean, since my daughters work for LAPL, I hear it all the time. There will be people who will walk into the library branch, and the first thing they're going to do is walk over to whoever's working the reference desk and say, "Can you help me?" And it would be really nice if they knew to say, "Okay, come over to this computer and let me take you to the website." I mean, that's really, I think, all they're going to need to do for most people. But it's really unhelpful when you just drop stuff off and somebody walks in and goes over to the reference desk and the librarian's like, scan the QR code, I think. So
We have applications here?
yeah, exactly. I mean, they do a great job, but they deal with a whole lot of stuff. And yeah, it's one of the big problems is everybody goes in, asks a million questions, and that's just my recommendation. So
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Because I know we've been working with those departments, but I think we do need to follow up to make sure that the staff is aware, or at least has access to that information. So they're not just, like, I don't know, I've never seen that form before. So that's great tip. Right. Any other questions or suggestions?
What exactly, when you said that you'd done this, what I had suggested in 2021, do you remember basically what the email that you sent out said and to how many people approximately you sent it out to?
I would have to look up to remember how many there were, because it's
Super rough.
really, it's just whoever includes an email address with their voter registration form.
Mhm.
So it was definitely a lot. We basically had a flyer in the form of an email.
Mhm.
I will say we didn't necessarily get the best positive responses, But however, you're not gonna, that doesn't mean it wasn't effective, because you can have very effective, those people just might not be emailing you to complain, but they could be filling out the form. So I do think it's a good thing to look into, but I can, when I follow up, I can send you an example of what it is.
Yeah, that would be great.
But yeah, it was just kind of a little form that just kind of said neighborhood council elections are happening to get people involved. And so I think, you know, doing outreach and trying to reach people, there's no harm in that. So it's a good
Yeah,
good
yeah,
reminder
for
to do
sure.
that.
Yeah, send it to me, what you sent last time. I'd love to talk about it and look it over and, see if there's ways we can make it pop.
Yeah, I'll definitely try to find that and I'll follow up with you. So,
All right, thanks, Michael.
yeah. Any other questions, comments?
Actually, I do have one more thing that, as I'm thinking about places that you wouldn't necessarily consider. For example, here in San Pedro, the Los Angeles Maritime Museum. A lot of people go there, and it's right, sort of in the heart of central San Pedro. And they got a desk right there at the entrance. And if you had like a little, one of those little plastic things where you put the flyer in it, set it on that desk, you might have some interest. They have a volunteer group there too. Places like that, where you get a lot of visitors. I'm sure there are others, but that pops into my head. As well as places like Siren's Coffee Shop and whatnot. I mean, we can work with Mary Lou to help her get
Yeah,
that list.
I've already added it to my list. We can work with our field team that's in that area to make sure that we and as I stated, we'll be doing some canvassing. So we can add some of these to our list so that we can make sure to drop off whether it be applications or flyers or put up a poster in an area. So that sounds
Yeah,
great.
Pedro in particular has a lot of visitors serving locations. So, oh, and one other thing, and I think I'd mentioned this to Mary Lou before. We have spots at recreational facilities in particular with chain link fences that typically get covered with those great big banners, this weekend at Cabrillo Beach, the whale festival or whatever. That might be worth considering because there are some very busy intersections where those things go up. So
That's great. Those are the type of, investments that we want to make. So I will follow up with you,
okay,
Commissioner Epperhart, for more information on that because I may be interested in looking into that.
all right, thanks. I had gotten an email from you, but at the time my brain wasn't working that great, so I need the simulation of these meetings to remember those things.
It happens to the
Yeah.
best of us.
All righty.
All right.
Did Robin, did you have a question or something?
No, I'm good. I was a little confused about the difference between self-certification and documentation. And did you say that differs between bylaws?
Yeah. So each neighborhood council decides if it's going to be a self-affirmation or documentation. And so that's in Article 10 of the bylaws. But if you want, I can look up right now which verification type your neighborhood council is.
Sure. If it's quick, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I can do it pretty quick.
I can save you the trouble. Coastal
Oh.
San Pedro has never been self-affirmation. We have always been a documentation council.
Yeah, I don't see why
Free-
we even offer self-certification. It seems kind of like against the whole principle of the way the process works, but I don't know.
It depends on the neighborhood council. Neighborhood councils can choose what works for their community. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. All right. Any other questions? If not, then I guess everybody's free to go. Thank you very much for your participation. I hope to hear from many of you again, and I'll be following up on a few of
Where's
those.
the recording with the video and the slides going to be available in case you want to refer to it?
I hope to email that out. I just have to work on the recording, because if we email it out, it can get a little funky with emails. So I'm just hoping to upload that and get all that information out shortly. But if you need the slides sooner rather than later, just email me and I can email them to you.
I took some screenshots of a few, so then that if there's anything that I need or whatever, but sometimes it's good to be able to access the meeting and look at it and or fast forward through it if need be.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, thanks.